Back in 2003, Audi created a concept called the Audi Le Mans Quattro. It was the first iteration of what came in 2006 at the Geneva International Auto Show, which was the first production version of the Audi R8. And its ethos was simple: to create the most comfortable performance supercar on the market. Many years later, we have this, one of the final versions of the Audi R8, the Audi R8 V10 Performance Quattro Spyder. And today, we're gonna see if its ethos still harkens back to the original goal Audi had with creating the most comfortable performance supercar on the market. I'm Patrick DiTullio, and let's get to it. I think people forget that the R8 was really Audi's first true stab at the supercar world. Its production spanned over 17 years, a legacy that sadly ended in 2024 when the R8 was officially discontinued. As I mentioned, what you're looking at is one of the final iterations of the R8, specifically the V10 Performance Spyder Quattro. It makes 602 horsepower from that naturally aspirated 5.2-liter V10, weighs in at 1,770 kilograms or 3,913 pounds, and rockets from 0 to 60 in just 3.2 seconds. Alright, that's enough of the specs for now. Let's get to driving this thing, but first, just look at those views. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome inside the Audi R8. So as we know, we want to judge this car by its ethos. The Audi R8 has 4 different driving modes. You got comfort, auto, dynamic, individual, and then you have this race mode button where you can either select dry, rain, or snow. Right now we're in the dynamic mode, and we also have the race mode on as well. So I'm gonna put it back into comfort. I'm gonna pop it out of manual mode, and we're just gonna listen and feel how this car drives when it's in the less sportier setting. First interesting thing that I notice is the car likes to cruise. What I mean by this is when you're off throttle, when you're really not on throttle, the engine noise sort of cuts off in comfort mode. It kind of becomes this nice, sweet experience where you listen and hear the ambiance. If you're in a location like this, right, it's nice, where you hear the ambiance of the outside. You don't hear that naturally aspirated V10 engine as much. I think it's super important for the ethos of this car, right? Sometimes you don't always want that naturally aspirated V10 to be grunting behind you. Granted, I will say it still seems a little bit louder. The reason being is this car actually has a custom exhaust on it. That's something if I had an R8, I would do anyways, so I'm not mad about it. I always want to be listening to that naturally aspirated V10 when I hear this car. Overall, when I first got into the car, it really didn't take me long to become accustomed with it. I think it's a pretty easy car to drive in terms of visibility. The visibility overall is fantastic, especially because this is a Spyder. I can take the roof down. I can see so much. The wing mirrors have great visibility. The seating position, it's comfortable. Like I said, there really wasn't anything holding me back from getting accustomed to this car. And the dynamics are actually pretty easy as well to get accustomed with. There wasn't anything that felt out of place, felt weird, right? Brake, throttle application didn't really feel weird. It was easy to get accustomed to. It kind of reminds me of how quickly I got accustomed to driving the GT3. It just felt right. So now, as we got the comfort settings out of the way, I'm gonna go straight to put this bad boy into dynamic mode. And there all of a sudden you can hear the car starts putting the engine in a higher RPM, keeping it ready. But what I'm going to do myself is I'm going to put it into the manual mode, and we're going to go right back up this mountain and feel how this car drives a little bit more enthusiastically when we put it into performance mode. All of a sudden now, the engine is constantly on. Even if I really get off throttle, the engine noise is still there. It's louder. The steering wheel, it does stiffen up quite a bit. One thing that I want to mention with the performance variant of the Audi R8, which this is as standard, you actually get a different suspension. You get a one setting all suspension, sport suspension. It's a little bit stiffer, it's a little bit more track performance oriented, and it takes away, or you don't use, the Magna Ride adaptive dampers that the base Audi R8 gets. Now the interesting point there is that you could argue that that takes away from the daily drivability and the ethos that we originally mentioned in the beginning of this video. But honestly, for me, there's other supercars that I've driven that are much, much harsher. And something that I almost experience with this suspension, because it's one setting, everything feels a little bit more connected. All four wheels, I almost understand a little bit more of what's going on and what's going on in each corner, right? Like the car hops together, if that makes sense. Over some of these bumps, the whole car feels as if it's one platform. And the other interesting thing that I think that does, it makes the car feel lighter than it actually is. The car is about 1,750 kilograms for reference, and there's a couple other supercars, sports cars that are in that range of weight, like the AMG GTC Roadster. That compared to this feels a little bit more blocky. Feels like there's a little bit more stuff going on with the suspension. So I actually almost prefer the performance suspension in terms of the feel that it gives me and the fact that it's actually not that bad in terms of drivability. I know a couple other people have mentioned that in city roads it's pretty rough. I haven't driven the R8 there, so I can imagine that that is the case, although at the moment it doesn't feel too bad at all. And it actually feels really, really solid. It makes the car feel put together, if that makes sense. Now, one thing that I don't necessarily like that much is Quattro, or all-wheel drive. All right, Quattro is Audi's version of all-wheel drive, but again, I don't think it's taking away from the steering wheel feel that too much. There was one time where I was driving the car earlier and I was kind of pulling the car out of a corner when I was going a little bit slower, right? It's a U-shaped corner, so you brake pretty hard, pretty aggressively, and then you accelerate hard out of the corner. There, it felt like the steering wheel was moving around a little bit due to my throttle application. But overall, in the higher speed corners, it doesn't really affect the steering feel too much. But I think this all-wheel drive does add to the R8's ability to be a little bit of a cruiser and to add a little bit more stability in the corners, right? It does do that. Now right there, in terms of speed, again, this isn't break my neck speed performance. This is not the fastest supercar I've driven, but it's enough. And that noise, that's only 5,000, 5,500. Half of the rev range that's possible with this engine, and that's all I need. Like, I don't need to rev this car all the way out to even enjoy the acoustics of the engine. And because of that, I don't feel like I need to drive the car like an actually is the best way to put it, to enjoy it. I don't need to go so fast. I can still cruise, play with the revs, and enjoy the vehicle. Interesting thing as well to call out is how this engine sounds compared to the Huracan. It sounds a little bit more grunty. It's almost like it's got a little bit more of a race tune to it. And here's Atase, by the way. Another lake. I think overall, I mean, I love the way this car looks. I mean, those oval-shaped exhaust, the sound of the car, kind of the feeling that you get driving this is that you feel like a distinguished gentleman in this car. And you wouldn't get that feeling in a Lamborghini Huracan. You just would not. And it's because of the looks. It's because of the feel of the minimalistic interior. It's because the car still has this character to it with that naturally aspirated V10, but isn't as outlandish, all right? Like the car does a great job of finding that balance in between a car that you can daily drive. That's exactly it, right? It's something that you can rip around the mountains, but also take to work every day, and people don't look at you like you're driving a Lamborghini to work every day. You're driving an Audi, but you're driving a Audi that has character, right? That people know is something different, that's something special, but maybe it's not as annoying as a Huracan. And then the other aspect that I love about it, I mean, it's a Spyder. You take the top down and you listen to that engine. And when you have the top up, you can see this glass panel right behind me that can go up and down. So if you still want to listen and hear the acoustics of the gorgeous sounding naturally aspirated V10, you can. I will say one thing that bothers me a little bit is these paddles, they feel plasticky. I mean, for a car that's almost $200,000, and that was $200,000 at MSRP, that's questionable. But I do like how even in the interior, all the buttons and dials, they feel in the right place. You actually still have this tactile feel where you can spin dials, right, for all your different settings on the AC and the temperature. You have buttons for start and stop. The start and stop button is red. It just feels like it is properly put together. You know, the Huracan interior feels very, very modern, very, very spaceship-like. This just feels more elegant, more classic. The car does get a good amount of looks, right? I think, you know, here driving around in Austria with the top down, people are looking at the car. It is an eye catcher, but again, it finds that balance. She is a feisty old gal. But like I said, in terms of speed, it really isn't neck-breaking performance. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fast, but a Huracan is faster, and a Turbo S is faster. But again, I have no problem with that, right? That's not what I'm searching for with this car. Also, the gearbox. It's a dual clutch transmission, the shifts are fast, there's no problem. I think down low, sometimes it feels a little bit sluggish, and I think the down kick when the car is shifting gears itself, right, when you don't have manual mode selected, there's a little bit of a hesitation on the kick down, right? It's not like Porsche PDK fast, but again, that's nitpicky, that's small, nothing too major. And revved out, that engine sounds so damn good. Oh my gosh. Oh! When that V10 bounces off those walls, it is heavenly. Holy crap. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about was the brakes. In a second. What I like about the brakes, these are carbon fiber ceramic brakes. You get them as standard in the performance trim. And what's nice about them is they are somewhat like race car brakes, right? The initial bite on them is not that heavy. You actually have to push about an inch into the brake pedal to start to get some of that stopping power activated. And if you really want the full force, you really got to hit the brakes. To me, that allows you to get a little bit of a better feel when doing some enthusiastic driving. It's such an important aspect, I think, in a performance vehicle. I hate bitey brakes. I hate them. as they are carbon fiber ceramics, they do have some good stopping power, but when you are cruising and when you're just getting off the line or you're coming to a stop slowly, they do have some chutter to them, right? They are squeaky. They're race brakes, right? They're carbon ceramics. You're gonna get some of that squeakiness. A lot of customers talked about the fact that they sound like a school bus coming to a stop. That's how bad the squeakiness is. And I can attest it is pretty bad. I mean, look, that's just one of the things that you're gonna get. Like here, I'm using 35% brake throttle application. And the car has enough stopping power. I read a book recently called Optimum Drive, and the premise behind the book is really about how to become a great racing driver, really the greats like Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher. And it talks about how they all got to this level of greatness in various ways. But the one commonality and common theme is flow state. Now, flow state is a common term, right? It's used in many different verticals, many different applications. But what the book was talking about was how great drivers, when they're driving great, they're driving unconscious. They're in that flow state. And I think you can apply that to how a supercar makes you feel. Does it induce a form of flow state easily? Or does it take a lot to get used to the car? I think that's a good way to judge if a car is structured properly, if it's built, truly reaches its purpose, its original design purpose, right? I think this car, it truly does. The way it makes me feel and the usability of it comes naturally. It does induce that flow state. And I think it has to do with a couple of things. It has to do with the suspension. It has to do a little bit with that all-wheel drive system, just making the car a little bit easier to drive. But then also it has to do with that engine, right? That engine is so intense. The sound and the acoustics it creates, it takes you to a different space. When you're driving the car, you're not thinking about anything else. You're like, oh my goodness, the sound is invigorating, right? You get immersed into the driving experience. And I think the R8 does a very good job of doing that because all the little things like the minimalistic design in the interior, the exterior design, the curves, they're just angled right. It's not too outlandish, but you still tell that this is a performance vehicle. I mean, another thing is this heads-up display here. I have the whole map right in front of me on this digital infotainment system right behind the steering wheel. It's like everything that you need is in the vicinity of the driver's view. There's no distractions like digital gauges on the passenger side dashboard, right? It really does help you immerse into that driving experience. The way the interior is curved towards the center line of the driver's eye view. All those little things, they attribute to that flow state. You wouldn't think so. You think those things are such little things, but in a way they matter. They matter for the customer experience. Now, one thing that I think the R8 could have done a little bit of a better job of, you call this a daily drivable supercar, and the only real luggage space you have is the frunk, and the frunk is not that big, right? I think a lot of people who would potentially buy this car maybe want to take it to the golf course. Maybe they are retired and they want to drive it to the golf course daily. Well, where the hell are you going to fit your bags? You're going to have to put them right here and then you can't bring a passenger, right? I mean, compromises, but things to think about. But when you hear that growl, that NA V10 that's no longer in production, there's no other V10 in production, it's crazy. I think the compromise is probably worth it. oh me, oh my, look at that freaking view as well. I think another point besides the review aspect of the Audi R8 is driving supercars in a location where you can actually use them. Europe is prime for that. And where we are right now, it's a little bit busier, but you still have these windy mini mountaintop passes where you can actually use and let the car breathe. Makes it so much more enjoyable. Where we are right now is Upper Austria, the Salzkammergut region, specifically by a lake called Traunsee, and the big mountain you saw earlier, a staple called Traunstein. And then you see these pasture fields with the cows right next to you. It's a little bit of an opposite effect, but it almost feels like being in the open top Spyder, cruising around these roads. It brings you closer to nature. It's an experience. You wouldn't think, right? It sounds contradictory. A high octane, fuel burning, naturally aspirated V10 bringing you closer to nature, but you take it to locations. It is a GT cruiser, right? Those experiences, you don't forget them.
So what's my consensus on this second gen Audi R8 V10 performance Spyder Quattro? Well, it was very easy to get accustomed with, and it offers great performance and an engine that pulls you deep into its experience. That NA V10 is hard to beat when it comes to sound and soul. But to confidently call it the most comfortable performance-oriented supercar out there, I'd need to drive a few more contenders to make that decision confidently. That said, from the cars I have driven, it's definitely up there, striking that balance between supercar performance and everyday usability. And yes, I had to add that traditional Austrian music cue at the beginning. It only felt right, and tradition matters.